On March 24th, 1842, Dickens took a train from Baltimore, Maryland to York, Pennsylvania. This line was completed 4 years earlier in 1838. On March 24th, 1842, Dickens would have arrived here in York City at West Market and what was then the Water Street Depot. It's now called Pershing Avenue. So Dickens took the train to its from Baltimore to its northern stopping point here in York City. Afterwards, he had to transfer into a stagecoach. So he actually walked up that way to what was then the Whitehall Hotel, and is now called the National Hotel. So Dickens wrote that he had dinner at the National Hotel. So the National Hotel was also the stagecoach transfer location. So Dickens would have had dinner here at what was called the Whitehall Hotel back then. It's now called the National Hotel. But he also had transferred onto the stagecoach via the Harrisburg Mail stagecoach, which is a huge coach. It would travel a turnpike between York and Harrisburg, PA. Dickens wrote, "For as soon as we had dined, there came rumbling up the street a kind of barge on wheels. If here ain't the Harrisburg Mail at last," cried an elderly gentleman in some excitement. "Go ahead, Captain," cries the colonel, who directs. "Go lang," cries the captain to his company, the horses, and away we go. Dickens would have arrived to what was called Henrietter's Tavern, and this was an old stagecoach route. It was actually called the Turnpike that connected York to Harrisburg. So Dickens wrote that he traveled this old turnpike up to Harrisburg, and then from there on he took the canal. out to western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. So Dickens arrived at Henrietter's Tavern here in what was Goldsboro, Pennsylvania. It's about a mile north of Goldsboro. The tavern would have been located right on the side of the road here. It was actually an exchange location for the stagecoach line. Now in 1842, there was actually two competing stagecoach lines, and it was like 5 cents for the trip from York to Harrisburg. Unfortunately, I've been checking all the historical records. I was able to find a photo of the tavern, but so far I've been unable to find the exact location of where the tavern was located. I did see a picture, however, of a barn that was supposedly in proximity to the tavern. Now, I visited here probably about 10 years ago, and there used to be a barn right here. It's been torn down, unfortunately, but the barn matched the photos of the old barn next to Henrietter's Tavern, which is why I believe the tavern was most likely on this side of the road here. So after reading old historical papers from back in the early 1900s, there were some things written about Henrietter's Tavern being torn down and removed after the railroad line was widened and placed over top of the actual turnpike. According to the older maps I found, the rail line actually went over top of the turnpike here in most places. So in the early 1800s, Henrietter actually ran a ferry across the river down here. You can see the ferry crossing on some of the older maps. Unfortunately, it's all private property now at this point, but the ferry crossed at the peak up here, right at the north side of that island. And that ferry was still in operation when Dickens passed through this area. Now, the old stories about Dickens passing through here, some of the townspeople wrote that he actually ate a sauerkraut dinner while he stayed here in Goldsboro, and he commented that it was the first time he ever had sauerkraut dinner. So a year later, after returning from this trip to America, Dickens actually wrote A Christmas Carol, and the dinner featured was a sauerkraut dinner. So that's the locals' claim to fame here in Goldsboro, was that sauerkraut dinner was written into A Christmas Carol a year later. But from what I can tell, this was the location of Henrietter's Tavern.
Newberry Township history books show that in 1835, Black Dan Johnson, in a jealous fit, killed his comrade Jim Brown by cutting him in the abdomen with an axe at Henrietter's Tavern. Dan was tried and convicted of murder, but died while in prison at York the night before he was to be sentenced.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't tell if some of these rocks here are some sort of foundation. I don't know. Modern structure, possibly from the railroad. I mean, it's strange with the beams here. So like I said, one of the old history books said that the Henrietter's Tavern was torn down when the railroad was widened here. So, you know, it leads me to believe that it would have been located somewhere here along the tracks. Unfortunately, I only knew one individual that knew the actual location of the tavern, and I never got a chance to get here with him before he passed away. Well, my good friend John Calaman left me all of his history books of this area. That's where I did a lot of my research for this, for Newberry Township, York County in general.